Hello, Assalamu alaikum. Can I ask you a question? Do you have children? Are you perhaps an aunt or an uncle? Have you ever pondered over what happened to the children of Karbala, especially after the battle? History is a little bit silent on this topic. However, I was fortunate enough to sit down with a researcher, Father Christopher, who's managed to extract some key pieces of information about what happened to these children. I was very intrigued. You know what? I'm going to stop talking. Let's get straight to it. Enjoy.
So we know immediately that Abdullah bin al-Hassan was not an adult. He was a child who should have been in the tents. And he is too fast for Zainab. He escapes past her and says to her basically, nothing will separate me from my uncle. But Sakina or Sukaina did another thing, and that was she also preached a little sermon in Kufa.
Right.
So when they arrived in Kufa, Lady Zainab spoke, Zain al-Abidin spoke, and she also spoke. In fact, as I remember, the people were trying to give them food, and she said, we don't want your food. We wanted your allegiance, not your food.
And this is a child age range from
a
3
young
to
child.
6,
Yeah,
7,
this is a
8,
young
something like
child,
that.
yeah. Well, I have to admit that much as I love Lady Zainab, the first person I want to meet if I get finally into the garden is Abbas.
Father Christopher? Do you get called Father Chris? I know I'm going back.
Some people just call me Chris, really.
Really?
Yeah.
Is that informal though?
It
Come
is
on,
very
you're
informal,
a man
but,
of respect.
but it is my name.
That is true.
Yeah.
That is true. Okay. So, Father, you may not know something about me. It's my turn, right?
Okay.
I too am a father.
Oh.
But not like, of course, a
Not
godly
like
man
me.
like yourself. I'm the run of the mill standard father
Yeah.
of 3. Alhamdulillah.
Yeah.
And why I'm bringing this up is because when we go to majalises in Muharram, as you know. By the way, have you experienced like majlis?
I have.
Yeah.
I have in South Africa. I went to the Shia community there more than once. Yeah.
English? What
no,
language was it?
No. In Arabic.
In Arabic?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay. Have you attended any English majlises?
I haven't.
I highly recommend them.
Okay.
So when we sit through towards the end, which is the eulogies, the sad part, and obviously we get told of what took place in Karbala. And when I'm, obviously sitting there, hands over my face and just listening, especially when I was younger, I would listen about the children of Karbala.
Yeah.
And it was tormenting to listen to stuff, and I'd be shocked and appalled. When I was obviously bestowed with these gifts, these 3 gifts of mine from God, now I listen, and I feel more anger this time around, because I'm listening and I'm like, no, please, to the, like, within myself, obviously I'm saying don't say any further. That cannot take place. That cannot happen. That's a child, right? Because now I know, because I too have a small Sukina. I do have a Abbas as well, right? And I'm thinking of these children and these harsh conditions that they've had to endure. Adverse conditions, and no one should ever, even if you're fit and able and capable, they would be staying far away from what took place. It was dry, you're parched, you're a child on top, you're weaker compared to a normal healthy adult, and the psychological impact that it must have had on the survivors, right? What can you tell me about the children of Karbala? What role did they play? For example, how many were there, if you know? Because I think it's hard to decipher that. Tell me, Father, what do you know about the children of Karbala?
Yeah, I think that's the very point, is that we forget the psychology and we romanticize the battle. And there's nothing romantic about any slaughter, ever. It's a horrible thing. But we do that in a sense because we need to tell the story and be able to keep retelling the story. So one of the one of the kind of sad things is that we have the names of the principal martyrs, that is Al-Hussein himself,
Yes.
Abbas. There also, we have the names of all the others who were killed, although their names are not so well known. If you were to go to ask somebody, name some of the other people killed, they would struggle a little bit, because we know Al-Hussein and Al-Abbas, well, and for good reason.
Is it that they overshadow?
They overshadow, in a sense. They certainly, they do. They
do.
Yeah.
Obviously, because I always thought of Karbala being not a tragedy, but many tragedies within a tragedy.
Certainly, because all the others also died. They also gave their lives, and so they're important. But then there are the survivors, and the survivors are the ones who we're inclined to forget, because we forget that psychological trauma
Yes.
is as devastating and as damaging as physical trauma. So what we know from the books of Maqtal, the Maqatul books, and there's a variety of them. We look at Abu Mikhnaf. We look at Abu Mikhnaf as he is in Tabari and Baladhuri and a few other Sunni authors.
Sure.
So what we know is, first of all, is that the first to be killed was not a child. He was Ali al-Akbar, and he would have been in his 20s. So let's move him out of the way.
Okay.
The one who was killed soon after him was a son of Hassan, and that was probably Abdullah. And Abdullah staggered onto the battlefield, and it was at this point that Al-Hussein said to Zainab, pull him back into the tent. So we know immediately that Abdullah bin al-Hassan was not an adult, he was a child who should have been in the tents. And he is too fast for Zainab. He escapes past her and says to her basically, nothing will separate me from my uncle. So we know immediately that he is a son probably of Al-Hassan,
Sure.
and we know that he is a child. He then challenges the ones who try to kill is quite brashly. He basically insults the man who's going to kill him, and then dies at the side of Al-Hussein. So
did he manage to get a soldier or two?
No,
no.
I think
he's
not.
too young then.
He was too small.
What age range?
Well, if he was in the tent, in other words, if he was not allowed onto the field, you could immediately presume that he was a young child.
Sure.
Because that's how it worked. They were teenagers fighting, but these were children.
So literally, he must have released himself from the grasp of his mom.
He ran out of the tent.
Ran out.
He ran onto the field. Al-Hussein desperately tries to get Zainab to stop him, and he says, I won't be stopped, and he dies by his uncle's side. So that's the first one. There's a second son of Al-Hassan who is named as Al-Qasim.
Sure.
And we remember him because Al-Qasim staggers onto the field dragging the sword which is too big for him. And more important for me is one of the eyewitnesses notices that his sandal strap is broken. Now, I think eyewitnesses who notice little details are trustworthy eyewitnesses.
Okay.
I mean, why would that be important?
Okay.
But this eyewitness said, as he walked onto the field, I saw that one of his sandal straps was broken. And
I just want to get that vision correctly in my mind.
Yeah.
So Al-Qasim, young Al-Qasim,
Yeah.
son of Imam Hassan alayhi salam, was he on a horse, on his trusty
no,
steed,
no,
or was he
no,
walking?
he was walking. He was
with
walking,
his sword,
dragging the sword, and
with a broken sandal.
And the
Or-
text
yeah.
described that he had the face like a sliver of the moon. So there's this radiance about him, but he's very young. And he also is going to be killed. So he's the second youngster we know who was killed. And of course, thirdly, is the infant son of Al-Hussein. These are three definites. So in all of the mystery, because we don't know how many children were there exactly.
Sure.
We don't know all the names, how many were boys, how many were girls. But we do know that at least three youngsters who we can name were killed by adult soldiers. That already is, is terrifying. So this little Abdullah, I think, bin al-Hassan, who taunts the soldier, basically says, your mother's immoral. Basically, that's what he said to him. How dare you try to kill my uncle? You give a child like that a smack and send him away. You don't kill him.
No, but in Karbala, that's what these perpetrators obviously did.
That was all part of the thing.
Yeah.
They were going to wipe out the whole lot of them.
What kind of crime is that now compared to nowadays, right? So we have all these rights for each and every community. We have obviously human beings, animals, etc. Is there some sort of convention? Is there some sort of organization that's listed out a list of laws where crimes against children? Is there an act, a legislation, perhaps that comes to mind? If there was, each act or legislation would be broken in Karbala.
There is, in fact. There's the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights for Children. This exists.
That's what I was aiming for.
Absolutely. Okay. So, you know, they were on the battlefield by their own choice. In other words, these little boys ran out of the tents, which is where Al-Hussein confined his family to protect them. The tents were very carefully built or constructed in such a way that they were safe. So these two little boys, both of whom were devoted to their uncle, were determined that they were going to take their stand.
But Al-Qasim was given permission, as I understood it.
Even if he was given permission, he should not have been on a battlefield. He was too young.
Of course.
But they wouldn't step back from their uncle. And
they were going to go anyway.
Says something about Al-Hussein. It says something that the power of his attraction even works in the children.
Wow.
So we have their 3 named children who are killed. The rest of the children, however many there were, we don't know how many of them also went out and fought. We're not sure if any did. They're not named.
Sure.
And we don't know how many of them survived. But certainly among the survivors were women and children, both male and female.
Tell me about Lady Sakina, right? So first of all, her age, because I think there's a
It's hard to know.
It's hard, isn't it? So an age range then, if I could have from you.
I think she might have been round about 11. I don't know. It's hard to know.
Twice she's recalled, or her stance in Karbala, her story, which is once when she sends her uncle Abbas, because of the other children and the thirst that they were going through, experiencing, Alabbas alayhi salam went to the river Euphrates, tried to get some water, tried his level best to get some water. The other instance which I can recall is the last farewell from her father, with her father, where her father's about to, on the horse, the Zuljana, and he's about to, tell his trusty steed to, let's go now, last time I'm going to ask you to, but it's not moving because his daughter is right there holding on to one of the legs of the horse. Did I miss any? Because these two.
One very important
Please
one.
tell me.
And that is that Sakina has a dream while she is in Damascus.
Right.
And she goes to Yazid and says, I had a dream, would you like to hear it? And it's an extraordinary dream of heavens opening, of these great domes descending, of these women on horseback, these noble women. One is Khadija, one is, I think, Sarah, the wife of Ibrahim. One is, who else? I can't remember these. Oh, for Lady Fatima, of course. Lady Fatima, of course. And then there are also a group of men on horseback, and this is the Prophet himself and all the great martyrs like Hamza and the others. And it's all a complex dream about them coming down to take to themselves all of these who have been killed. And as if Yazid hasn't had enough. He's already had to be tackled by Lady Zainab. He's got his own wife at him about dreams. And now this little girl walks in and says, I also had a dream. And it finishes him. He just dismisses her. He says, I'm not interested.
So this happened in Yazid's palace courtyard when he had everybody kind of on display?
No. This is probably afterwards when they were in a sort of a house. Well, they were sort of a house arrest. Okay. Eventually they ended up in a sort of a house arrest.
Is that where Sakina or Sukaina?
It's difficult to know because if the texts of the Arabic texts are not tashkiled, then if you don't have the vowels, it could be Sakina or it could be Sukaina, and quite clearly they were two different personalities.
I was about to say the opposite. I thought, what if they're just pronouncing it differently? It's the same person.
I suspect there were two, at least two. There may have been more, because it's not that it's a unique name. And I suspect there was more than one. There was a Sukina and there was a Sukaina.
Were they both the daughters of Imam Hussein?
I'm not sure. I genuinely don't know.
Wow.
And I don't know because in the book I wrote about Lady Zainab, I have an appendix of the book trying to enumerate how many children Al-Hussein actually had and what their names were. And when you get to the girls, it gets a bit confusing. There was certainly a Fatima. There was almost certainly a Sukina or a Sukaina. I don't think there were two with the same name differently pronounced.
Sure. Where did Sakina or Sukaina pass away?
Well, one of them died in prison.
House arrest or prison? Well, so they had shifted them from house arrest into the prison area?
It was pretty much the
same thing. Right.
And I think she died there, quite possibly in house arrest. I think there was also another girl who died. Maybe Ruqayya also died, but certainly I think Sakina died. I have to be honest; it is quite confusing because the names. If you're reading them in Arabic, you say, "Well, is this Sakina who died or Sukaina who died?" I'm not entirely sure. But one of them died as a young child in prison or in house arrest. But Sakina or Sukaina did another thing, and that was she also preached a little sermon in Kufa.
Right.
So when they arrived in Kufa, Lady Zainab spoke, Zain al-Abidin spoke, and she also spoke. In fact, as I remember, the people were trying to give them food, and she said, "We don't want your food. We wanted your allegiance, not your food."
And this is a child, the age range from
a
3
young
to
child.
6,
Yeah,
7,
this is a
8,
young
something like
child,
that.
yeah.
So the one that passed away, Sakina, in the prison, I would imagine that would be just everything taking its toll.
Yeah, psychological
From
trauma.
the day of Ashura, how many days after or months after was her passing away?
Hard to tell because we don't know how long the journey from Karbala to Kufa took. We don't actually know how long they were in Kufa before they were sent on to Damascus, and then they were in jail for a period until Yazid gave permission for Imam Zain al-Abidin to accompany them back to Medina.
So from Ashura, having witnessed her family members, especially her dad, being slaughtered, the psychological trauma, then the physical sort of abuse from traveling, being paraded from one place to another, being imprisoned, then having to see the members of her family who she loved and held really close to, like Auntie Zainab, Imam Zain al-Abidin, and seeing what they're going through. Again, more trauma constantly, and finally it was her time to go.
For a group of women and children, the journey from Karbala to Kufa and from Kufa to Damascus is no mean feat. You know, it might be easy for people today, but ask the people who walk the Arba'in about the difficulties of these long journeys.
Sure.
And you've got a group of traumatized women and children surrounded by enemy soldiers who could have abused them in all kinds of ways. We don't actually know the details. I can't imagine that journey was a quick and easy step from one place to the next.
Absolutely not. And nowadays, you mentioned Arba'in. Obviously, there's things put in place to facilitate that walk as well, to make it a bit easier.
Yeah, to make it bearable.
Bearable, exactly. There's talks about putting up extra trees there to give the pilgrims shade, etc., and what have you. Have you had the opportunity yet? Have you been?
I haven't. Again, bucket list.
Bucket list. Have you been to Karbala or Najaf or any of those places?
I haven't.
Let's go together.
That'd
be awesome.
We'll go.
Even though I recently went, but
we'll go.
I physically have come back. This is what I keep telling, because everybody keeps asking me, how was your trip?
You're mentally still there.
I'm mentally, and my heart's still there.
Of course. Should be.
I've physically come back because I have a contract of employment and I have to fulfill the 9 to 5.
And a passport and a visa that's going to expire. But
that's it.
No, absolutely. I mean, I keep saying to people that I've got a list of places. Damascus is one of them.
We should go together with Safia TV. That would be awesome.
Anyway,
we'll take the whole cast and crew.
Yeah,
okay.
take the cast and crew.
Going back to the children of Karbala, going back to that moment where Sukaina asks her uncle Abbas to go fetch a bit of water, which is such a standard and basic ask. It's a right. Nobody should actually be asking for it. It's a common right that everybody deserves. But the circumstances were so dire in Karbala. So Hazrat Abbas, as we call Alamdar, Qamar Bani Hashim, I understand, you told me just before in the kitchen area, before we began, that you're writing about him, you're researching on him as well, is that correct?
So I have to admit that much as I love Lady Zainab, the first person I want to meet if I get finally into the garden is Abbas, because Abbas is an extraordinary person. And the trouble with Abbas is that we know tiny details. We know the water incident. And then after that, not so much.
Really sad, isn't it? Because we need to learn about Abbas, not just of the incident, not just Karbala, but before. How did he prep himself for Karbala?
We know very little about Abbas. So I thought, well, I'm going to see about this. But it is a difficult task because the sources are very few. And the sources don't always agree. For example, how many times did he go and fetch water? Only once? Or maybe more than once?
Interesting.
Possibly the night before as well, where he succeeded and then during the day when he was killed trying to do it.
What's the title of this book, or is it
I
still
haven't
under?
got a title.
You haven't got it yet.
Please feel free to brainstorm.
No, I'm not going to give you any ideas. I'm come
not
here
sure
to
what
get
to
your
call it.
information.
I'm not sure what to call it, but it's a work in progress, and it's going to take a while because it's worth taking time over. But, and I'm not even sure why he went to fetch water. Did Al-Hussein ask him, or did some of the children ask him? My reading suggests it was Hussein himself who delegated this.
Sort of used Sakina as an excuse.
The water
in a
was
way.
for the children.
Sure.
So Al-Hussein wasn't saying going to fetch. Al-Hussein was thirsty. The texts say his thirst intensified. But when he sent Abbas for water, he didn't send Abbas for water for himself. He sent it for the children.
Amazing.
In fact, in some stories, he does drink water. He gets water the night before Ashura, a small amount which Abbas manages to get from the river in some texts. And then on the day of Ashura, Abbas tries again and fails and is killed doing it. But, this is going to take a bit of sorting out because the earliest Shi'i texts suggest that the water fetching wasn't on the day of Karbala but the night before. But then that goes against the whole idea of his being killed trying to do it.
Well, I'm going to leave that.
Leave it to me. I'm going to sort
task.
it out.
Yeah, please do.
I'm going to sort it out.
Please do, and good luck with that.
Thank you.
I'm really appreciative towards your efforts that you're doing this, which is there's a requirement for it, and we've already alluded to it previously when we were talking about Bibi Fatima, Lady Zainab, how we just know of the key incidences. But it's not enough. We need to know about these personalities properly.
So Al-Abbas, for me, of all the things, Al-Abbas is the antidote to ego.
Oh, wow.
That's who he is. So if you want to give one virtue to each member of the Ahl Bayt, his virtue is that he is the antidote to ego.
There's your title.
Yeah.
Abbas, the antidote.
The man who is able to think of the needs even of a group of children rather than his own needs. So he's a big guy.
Sure.
He's a big guy. And even when he rides a horse, his feet are inclined to drag on the ground, apparently.
Yes,
he's
I've come across that as
well. So he's a tough guy.
We'll hold on to that when the book is released. Any time frame?
No.
Not yet, no worries. But
never
please
give
do let
time
us know.
frames.
Love to talk to you about that in more rigorous detail.
Yeah.
Yes, that was about the children of Karbala. There's nothing but sadness that comes off, and I applaud them. I stand and salute these children, and the ones who brought them up. And how they brought them up. Because if I compare them, which I don't want to, but if I compare them to the children this day and age, kids on their phones, right? And they don't know what's happening around them. They're just kind of, what's happening? And then these ones who just see their uncle in a state, and they're like, I cannot stand here. They were adults. Their behavior was profound, and their mental construct, everything. But thank you for that, Father. What I wanted to ask you now, again, we're talking about Karbala. This is something that I always fail to understand. Now, work with me here for a second. I watch movies, right? We want the protagonist, the hero or heroine. We want them to win, and they always do win towards the end of that hour and a half. The antagonist, we don't relate to. If we do, it's our bad sides. We want them gone, etc. The hero, at times, because of the plot, because of the story, if it's a good storyline, and directed by Spielberg. Well, Spielberg is old now, but whoever. The hero is kicked down through the process, but then he or she learns from their mistakes and grows and comes back and then finally wins that war, wins the efforts. In Karbala, if I was to tell anybody, I'm like my friends who don't know about this, I would be like, yeah, the man, this great man, he died. He was killed mercilessly. And that's it. But he's my hero, but my hero died. I don't know how to explain to them how he won. So how does one win by getting killed, giving up their lives? How does that work? Martyrdom, redemption, martyrdom. How does that work? How does Karbala boggles the mind?
Yeah.
So he lost a battle of Karbala, but he won the war on, again, just cliche, but evil and good. So good won. The righteous prospered. How does that actually happen?
Well, I think part of it is that people don't understand it because they don't understand what death is.
Right. Okay, I think I'm getting it. Okay.
It's not an ending. It's just...
That's deep, what you just said
It
there.
is. It's not an end. It's would that we prepared for our deaths with the same intensity with which our parents prepared for our birth.
Right.
Because death is just that. It is a birth into something bigger, something better. Now, that's another topic.
Sure.
But if people don't understand death, if they see death as annihilation in the end, then Karbala, like the death of Jesus in the Christian tradition, makes absolutely no sense at all. It's a defeat because you've been beaten. But that's because you haven't understood what victory is and you haven't understood what death is. Now, in the case of Al-Hussein, you're not just talking about death, you're talking about somebody who is willing to either give his life or willing to have his life taken, two different things.
Alongside his companions. But it comes with a complete package, and his family members.
Absolutely. Who is willing to do this freely, without compulsion, without feeling that in some way somebody's got a sword at his throat to do it. No, he does it freely. I mean, he's going to Karbala. He's not walking away from Karbala.
Yes.
I always think of 9/11. I always think of all those people running away, except for the firemen. The firemen were all running in the wrong direction.
True.
And I think that's Hussein. Of course, he's going to Karbala, not away from Karbala. So he's freely embracing what he knows is going to happen.
And something he was fully aware of. It's not by accident.
No.
I'm going to Kufa, I'm going to build a house there, live happily ever after.
And maybe I might have a problem. No, it's not that.
Exactly.
It's not that. So this is a man who, and he's not the only man in history or woman who's done this, who is absolutely willing to allow their lives to be taken or to give their lives, active or passive, for a greater good, because they know that death is not the end. It's just part of a journey into something much bigger. So they're not losing.
Could you name another individual?
Well, of course, from a Christian point of view, the person of Jesus, in the sense that he is also someone who freely allows his life to be taken by an unjust regime, both religious, because the regime was religious and political.
Right.
To have his life taken, A, because he knows that death is not the end, and B, because it's for a greater good. So it is the height of virtue to be willing to give. Most of us can barely give up bad habits.
Yes.
Let's be honest. How's that caffeine habit, by the way?
It's horrific.
So that, for example, for most of us human beings, even small bad habits are really difficult to give up. Watch somebody trying to lose weight or give up smoking or whatever they're trying to do and how they struggle. We're talking about people who give their lives. This is a completely different level of narrative.
It's like you're reading me, Father Christopher. You spoke about caffeine. I've revealed too much to you before the show began. That's why. And I told you I'm trying to detox from it and got headaches and went back to it again. Weight loss. I'm going to show you some of my old stuff afterwards. So we'll take this offline. But
so there's the level. We talk about martyrdom, but we should take our shoes off the way Moses did before the burning bush, before you talk about martyrdom, because martyrdom is an extraordinary thing and it's a gift of God. It's not given to everybody. It's given to a special group of people for God's own reason. So
I wanted to, I had somebody in mind as well, somebody similar who also had their heads decapitated. That's Zechariah. So Prophet Zechariah. Right.
So there's a whole list of them.
There's a whole list of them, and because we have that comparison, he was also martyred in a very similar fashion as to Imam Al-Hussein was.
In the Christian tradition, John the Baptist also is decapitated.
What's the Arabic of John the Baptist?
Well, there isn't, because baptism doesn't exist in Islam, the concept. So Yahya is John,
right?
But not John the Baptist. It's John. The Baptist is a particular title given. But Yahya is martyred by King Herod because he dared to suggest to Herod that he was immoral because he just married his sister-in-law.
Yes, something like that.
So he said that's immoral, and he got beheaded for that. So it's martyrdom. So martyrdom is a different category. And like Karbala, we kind of romanticize. No, there's nothing romantic. It's a horrible thing to have your life taken, or to know I have to give my life for this. I have to make a decision about this. That's a terrifying thing.
Are there levels of martyrdom?
Well, I mean, I think there are. I think there's the supreme kind of martyrdom where you literally give your life. But I think millions of people all over the world live Karbala every day. It's the martyrdom of living your daily life in a manner that is faithful to God, with all that entails. That entails a whole lot of things I'd like to do but I can't do, a whole lot of truths I'd like to hide but I can't hide, all kinds of issues. In order to be faithful, that's a form of martyrdom.
Of course.
So Karbala, I mean, I keep saying to people, Karbala is not a once in a particular year event in history. Karbala is a continuum in which people are invited to live, and each of us has our own daily personal moments of Karbala.
I certainly think there's levels of martyrdom, because if you compare the martyrs that we've just briefly touched upon to Imam Hussein, it wasn't one of those individuals that just was killed. He obviously, again, just kind of repeating what I said earlier, where he had to see his other close companions, friends, family members get killed first. Yeah. The agony that one individual would have had to gone through, and then finally laying down his own life was probably the easiest.
Instead of watching
the suffering, and then his child, who's he's saying goodbye to. I really generally don't know what's worse.
I mean, any father will tell you, I'd give my life for my children to protect them. Of course, I don't want to see them being harmed in any way at all, physically or verbally. And I would do everything in my power to make sure that doesn't happen.
And then having the vision that the Imams have, this divine understanding of the future as well, where they know that the women folk are going to be paraded, kidnapped, roped, they're going to be thirsty, hungry, they're going to be humiliated. I don't know what else to say.
So what is ostensibly a defeat is a defeat only in military terms.
Yes.
But in terms of everything else, it's not a defeat at all, because Karbala continues today.
This is why Lady Zainab said, I saw nothing but beauty.
Yeah. Karbala continues to this hour. People are being invited to embrace Karbala as the pattern of their lives, as the space in which they choose to live, because in that space, that's where injustice comes undone and begins to unravel. And while the names of some of the enemies are not forgotten only because we keep repeating them, because they're part of the story.
Sure.
But otherwise their names would have been forgotten generations ago.
Absolutely.
But Karbala and Hussein, no, absolutely not.
Ideally, it's the characteristics of the bad ones, right? The enemies that we want to stay away from.
Yeah.
We denounce them.
They're part of the story. You have to remember them, but they're not remembered for anything good. Whereas Karbala is remembered now as a magnificent moment, and it was foreordained. It wouldn't not have happened. I don't believe it wouldn't have happened. I think it was meant to happen.
Sure.
And you can tell that by the results it's had in however 600, 700, 800 years of history.
What if, here's a thought, what if Imam Hussein won? What if he killed Shimr, Umar ibn Sa'd, and all them weirdos, and his army won somehow? Alabbas took them all out. What would have happened? I mean, I know I'm asking a question that didn't take place.
Because it didn't take place because it couldn't have taken place.
That could not happen. That's the answer.
Because this was foreordained.
There was foreordained.
And therefore, there is no possibility in philosophy or theology to imagine something that is foreordained by God not happening, because the possibility doesn't exist even in thought. God ordained Karbala. Because martyrdom is ordained by God. I don't choose to be a martyr.
I've always wanted to see it, right? As I was growing up, I was younger, but I realized I was being very immature. I don't want to see Karbala anymore. I don't think I can handle that. I'm not one of the Ahlul Bayt. No way. I don't think I can witness that and still be normal again. Therefore, I don't want to, and thankfully Allah didn't. I wasn't born in that era, right? I'd be actually quite freaked out, because what if I was a Kufan, right? I wouldn't know what to do. I'd be scared for my life, my family's life, and kind of let this happen. No way. This is after me learning and growing up. But back in the day, I was like, oh, I wish I had a time machine. I'd love to go back in time and observe how the Ahlul Bayt lived, and in Karbala as well. No, and especially now, and I say this, okay, try to hear me out. I really wish no one ever builds a time machine or has no recollection of how Karbala took place, because if they did in this day and age, I don't know how to word it, so I'm just going to say it. You know, the selfie revolution. I do not want anyone to disrespect that and be like, "Oh, look, I made it back in time," and look, put it on your phones and just, come on. And I swear that's what these people would do. And I say when these people, I'm generalizing, right? Because there's a lot of people out there. Like I'm getting emotional here. I shouldn't. I told myself don't get emotional, but it is a touchy subject.
Look, it's a sacred space, and sacred spaces,
that's it,
are on their own level, and the same as the cemeteries of Mecca that have been obliterated. These are sacred spaces that are written deeply into the human psyche and into the human heart. I often describe Karbala as God's pencil by which he inscribes onto the human heart the capacity for justice, that human beings do have the capacity to stand up for what is right. Karbala is the proof of that, but it's our choice to do that.
So Karbala was for us to take a lesson from.
It's more than a lesson. Karbala is meant to be the model in which we live, the pattern in which gives shape to my own life.
Well said.
That I should stand with utter horror and grief before every single instance of injustice.
That's the framework we should be following.
Not a single act of injustice should ever pass me by without me even noticing it. And so it was very interesting when we spoke about the children of Karbala, because of course the children of Syria, the children of the Yemen, these are the ones who are suffering today, and they don't even get a mention.
You know what? You're making me feel really bad right now.
No, I mean,
I'm not doing anything.
But if you
for
look
anyone.
if you look at the media are fascinated by Big Brother or by Strictly Come Dancing.
Let's not even talk about that. Absolutely,
you know,
just rubbish, just time wastage.
Yeah, and they're children who are being massacred, and
I'd rather have them read a book, instead of watch the stuff that's on their reality TV. It's nothing.
It's just
nothing.
nonsense.
It's not reality.
And the truth is, it's a form of escapism.
Yes.
From people who desperately don't want to know the truth of what's happening around them.
Well, there's better ways to escape.
Yeah.
Like I said, read something educational. Do something that's more productivity towards your lives. Better yourself. Even if you don't want to go into the realms of history and look into this because you can't face it, you can't eye this.
Even better, read one of my books.
Read one of your books.
Yeah.
Shall we? So, Father Christopher, you've mentioned two of your books. Actually, no, one of your books. That's Half of My Heart.
Okay, so the first book was Lady Fatima, the book on Fatima.
That is correct.
Fatima, daughter of Muhammad.
Literally.
That's the title.
Fatima, daughter of Muhammad, peace be upon them. Yeah. And that's the same publisher, which is Georgius Press?
I think it's Georgius. Some people say Gorgeous Press. I don't think it's Gorgeous at all.
Gorgias.
Yeah, it's Georgius.
Yeah. But as long as they put your name there, they can Google and get your books.
Yeah, easily
that's
enough.
fine. This is a completely different title.
That's the latest book.
This is called
Angels Hastening. And the title is taken from a Quranic verse, I think Surat, I can't remember the chapter. It's from the English translation of an Arabic word by Pickthall, who was the classic kind of English translator, interpreter of Quran. And the angels hastening seem to be the angels that go ahead of the prophet, preparing the way for prophetic revelation. Angels hastening.
So this one is about the prophet.
This is about the dreams of the prophet and others, or the visitations of Jibreel predicting the death of Al-Hussein.
So it's about Imam Hussein.
It's about Imam Hussein. It's about the predictions, even before he was born, that he was going to die.
You wrote about Lady Fatima first, then you wrote about Sayyidah Zainab, and then this is your most recent, latest book that's already been published, and there's another one on its way about Alabbas.
Alabbas. And then I'm going to retire. I'm going to retire then. I'm going to put my feet up.
No, you need to keep going. You need to keep going. We need your brain to kind of...
my brain is shrinking.
Well, Father Christopher, how many times am I going to say thank you? Sometimes it's just not enough, these two words. It's just a pleasure to talk to you. So easy, you know that. But you're still here.
I'm still here.
Don't think that you can unbuckle your safety belt or anything like that. You're still here, and we're going to keep going. And thank you very much.
Not leaving the building yet.
Yes.